Hello everyone, a very good morning. Guys, today we are going to discuss GS paper 3 economy, that is Indian economy, and agriculture portion that came in the paper that was held yesterday. तो कल जो कुछ भी आया था पेपर में क्वेश्चन वाइज हम लोग डिस्कस करेंगे पूरी इंडियन इकोनॉमी और एग्रीकल्चर. And अगर if I give you my brief or overview that how the paper was, so see guys, पेपर बहुत easy था, कुछ भी ऐसा नहीं था जो अनएक्सपेक्टेड हो, आउट ऑफ द ब्लू कुछ आ गया हो, ऐसी कोई भी चीज़ नहीं थी. एवरीथिंग वॉज वेरी मच एक्सपेक्टेड एंड द क्वेश्चंस दैट केम, स्टूडेंट्स मोस्टली प्रिपेयर फॉर दीज क्वेश्चंस. ओके, सो इजी पेपर था. 6 क्वेश्चंस फ्रॉम द इंडियन इकोनॉमी सेक्शन एंड 2 क्वेश्चंस फ्रॉम द एग्रीकल्चर सेक्शन वर देयर इन द पेपर. एक एक करके हम लोग पूरा डिस्कस करते हैं और आपको सब कुछ समझ में आएगा. ठीक है, सो लेट्स बिगिन द एनालिसिस. So question number 1, examine the pattern and trend of public expenditure on social services in the post-reform period in India. To what extent this has been in consensus with achieving the objective of inclusive growth. ध्यान दीजिए, ये इंडियन इकोनॉमी का सेक्शन है और यहाँ पे ये लोग बात कर रहे हैं, दे आर एक्चुअली आस्किंग अस अबाउट द रिफॉर्म्स दैट टुक प्लेस post 1991. LPG reforms were held in 1991. So after that, the reforms that occur, they are talking about this. Okay, and question is asking us about the pattern which is sufficient for inclusive growth. Okay, now the question comes that first of all, what is inclusive growth? इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ की बात हो रही है, सो वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट व्हाट इज इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ. सो सी गाइस, अकॉर्डिंग टू वर्ल्ड बैंक, इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ मीन्स बाय पेस एंड पैटर्न ऑफ ग्रोथ. इट इज एक्चुअली द पेस एंड पैटर्न ऑफ ग्रोथ. मतलब इन लेमैन लैंग्वेज और इन सिंपल वर्ड्स आई कैन से दैट जीडीपी ग्रोथ and economic growth. Okay, that's what inclusive growth means, the growth of GDP as well as growth of economy. Fine. Now we need to discuss that post 1991 what reforms and all were taken, what is their present status, what are the challenges, and what is the way forward, how these reforms can affect in the long term. So let's get started. If I talk about post 1991, so what happened was that government has increased the allocation of funds for different schemes in India, that is social welfare measures. So the amount of fund that government was allotting prior 1991, government has increased the allocation of these funds after 1991 for social welfare. Understood? And when we talk about social welfare, we mean education, health sector, agriculture sector, so in etc. So in all these sectors, government has increased the allocation of fund. Government is giving more and more funds. Okay. Several schemes are introduced by the government after 1991 for betterment of these sectors. Okay, several schemes have been introduced for the betterment, and there were several schemes that were so much spread out that it was creating the confusion. So now government has consolidated such schemes and has launched several other schemes as well. Okay. Now, government is also introducing new methods for the allocation of fund, one of it being DBT. This means direct benefit transfer. Under DBT, the fund that government wants to allocate, it is directly transferred to the account of beneficiary. Okay. Direct benefit transfer has been introduced in the Modi government. Okay. Now what are the challenges? So see guys, how you had to write this answer. First of all, you needed to give the introduction that I gave you, that basically the question is talking about post 1991 reforms and it is targeting the inclusive growth. Then you have to tell what actually inclusive growth is. You can even quote World Bank that inclusive growth means pace as well as pattern of growth. After that, you have to move to the body of the answer. In body, you have to talk about post 1991, the steps that have been taken. Now, after that, you can move on to the challenges. What are the challenges? Number one, measuring effectiveness more important. See, government is launching schemes, government is taking steps, but how effective these steps are? In reality, if you come to the ground level, then these steps which are being taken by the government, are they literally doing any welfare or not? Or to what extent they are doing the welfare? Getting my point? These things are the major portion. They have to be considered. Getting my point? Second is, many schemes allocation done, but utilization rate is very low. The thing that I was talking just with you, that's what second point is. That many schemes have been launched, much allocation has been done. But if you talk about actual utilization, by actual utilization I mean that someone who needs the fund, is he getting it? Is the fund allotted being used properly, being utilized? That rate is very low. Undeserving people are still getting the allocations. People who are actually in need of it are not getting, or even if they are getting, then the process is very tiring. So all these things are there. Next is leakages. So fund has to be allotted to a farmer, for example. Now, instead of giving the fund directly to the farmer despite of DBT, it is going to someone else, some false farmer, and other discrepancies which we call as leakages. Next is better targeting. Government still needs to work on its database. It needs to figure out that who are the people government wants to target, and the benefits should be given to such people only. So targeting is very important here. Okay. Next is, the next aspect can be way forward. What all can be done in future? How can it be made a better scenario? So first is developing social infra. Government needs to develop a social infrastructure so that these steps taken by the government, they can be of some value. Second is using digital tools. See, today is the era of science and technology. We can use this technology for the better effectiveness. So digital tools should be employed for allocation purposes, for targeting, for selecting the database, all these things. Next is expanding the coverage. Government should expand and cover as many people as it can, and by people I mean people who are actually in need of it, people who are dependent on these policies. Got my point? So that's all was required in this answer. That's how you could have framed the body, and finally you could have concluded. I hope it is clear. Okay, moving on. Now question number 2, again from Indian economy, is what are the causes of persistent high food inflation in India? Comment on the effectiveness of the monetary policy of the RBI to control this type of inflation. See guys, this is question number 2, again from Indian economy. Pay attention. High food inflation is also referred to as stubborn food inflation. Why are we calling it stubborn? Despite of the several measures taken by the government agencies, by the RBI, this food inflation is still persists. That is why a common name, stubborn food inflation, is given to it. Fine. Now, What are the factors that contribute to it? Why such high food inflation is there? Why it is persisting? So see, the first factor is cultivation pattern. See, in theory, government says, people say, agencies say that they are taking various steps to upgrade the agriculture, to upgrade the cultivation pattern. But in reality, still agriculture is lagging way behind. Getting my point? Due to this, the cultivation pattern is still, the agriculture is relying on the old means, decades old means of cultivation. Not much use of technological processes and technology can be seen in Indian cultivation pattern. Due to this, the cost of cultivation is high, and when cost of cultivation is high, then the product produced will be sold at the higher prices, thereby leading to food inflation. Getting my point? Number 2, MSP. See guys, MSP, minimum support price, is also one of the factor that is leading to the higher food cost. How? See, in India, what has been observed, that government gives MSP for certain crops, mainly the staple like wheat and rice. So, since government is giving MSP on these staples, what farmers prefer doing is, they prefer growing wheat and rice, irrespective of the fact that their land may be very good for the growth or production of, let's say, potatoes or tomatoes, any vegetable or any other crop for that sake. But still, they are growing wheat and rice. Why? Because government is giving MSP on it. So they want to procure the MSP, and for that purpose, they are stubbornly growing wheat and staple food like wheat and rice to get MSP from the government. And what happens due to this? MSP is the cost that farmers are getting, but this is higher in comparison to market price. Yes or no? So when food is obtained at higher, when crop is obtained at higher price by government, then obviously government is going to, or in market it will be available at higher cost only. Getting my point? And when, second thing, opportunity cost. See, farmers could have easily grown other crops or vegetable in that land where they are stubbornly growing staple. Due to this vegetable and other crops, they are grown at other lands which are not that suitable for the growth of these crops. Thereby, the price of or input required for these crops, its cost again increases, thereby leading to the hike in the food prices. Now, next is higher input cost, that I have already told you. The reliance on the old methodology for the growth of crops leads to higher cost of production. Clear? Rainfall patterns and heat waves. See guys, the effect of global warming, the effect of pollution can be observed in the cultivation as well. The rainfall pattern have changed, they have shifted. The months when rain were occurring earlier, now in these months it's not occurring. Rather, rain pattern has shifted, the months have shifted, time duration have shifted. Uncertainty is there, due to which there are floods, due to which there is loss of crops. So these things also lead to inflation of food. Okay, and then heat waves. Again the same reason. For example, this year was very hot. Same goes with the last year. So due to these patterns, the cultivation of crop is becoming expensive and expensive, leading to food inflation. Next is rising demand. Now no one can neglect it. The thing is, then in India, we are the highest populated country in the world. 140 CR people to feed and more. And we have got limited land. Population is increasing, but agreeable land is not increasing. Yes or no? Thereby, the demand is very high, but supply is limited, again resulting in rise of the prices of food items. Next is imports and exchangeables. See guys, if we talk about India, so the edible oil, India majorly imports edible oil. Okay, India imports edible oil. Now what was observed, that government of India a couple of years back, it had put a tariff on the import of edible oil, thereby increasing the price of edible oil. So when the price of edible oil will increase, leading to food inflation, yes or no, import duty has been increased. Getting my point? So these are the factors that contribute. Now effectiveness of RBI in controlling inflation. So pay attention, understand one thing. If we talk about RBI in controlling inflation by its monetary policy or by its monetary tools, so what are the monetary tools of RBI? CRR, SLR, repo rate, reverse repo rate, open market operations, etc. These are the tools by which RBI controls the monetary policy, by RBI controls the prices in the market. Okay. Now understand what happens with these tools. Basically with these tools, RBI aims to control the interest rate prevalent in the market, right? RBI controls the interest rate prevalent in the market. Thereby, RBI is actually controlling the demand side. Yes or no? RBI is actually controlling the demand side. So by its monetary tools, RBI is only going to affect the demand pull inflation. The tools that are being referred in the question, or the monetary policy, it has got no control, or very little control in supply side. Okay, that means RBI has got no control over cost push inflation. That is supply side. This is being controlled by government, okay, not by RBI. Fine guys. So I hope this question is also clear to you. Okay. So that's how you could have written answer in this question. Moving on to the next question. Next is, what were the factors responsible for the successful implementation of land reforms in some parts of the country? Elaborate. Now see guys, when they are talking about land reforms or the successful implementation of land reforms, they are actually referring to the period after independence, that is post 1947. Okay. Now see guys, what happened was that how you could have started this answer, the introductory phase I am talking about. See, you could have started the answer with the bit of introduction, that being that after independence, government of India realized that major chunk of fertile land, okay, has gone to the Pakistan, right? If you talk about the agreeable fertile land after partition, the major portion of it, or I will say a very fertile portion, went to Pakistan, right? Whereas the major population was residing in India. Thereby, major poverty was prevalent in India. At that point of time, 50% of GDP came from your agriculture, and more than 70% of the population was dependent on agriculture. Thereby, agriculture was a very important aspect. Okay, so government had to focus on agriculture. Getting my point? But you all know that for agriculture, agreeable land or land is required. But farmers were not having land to do cultivation. Why? Because land was in the clutches of jamidars. Jamidari system was prevalent at that time. So when farmers are not having the land, how can they do agriculture in that land? Getting my point? Okay. So therefore, in the first 5-year plan, the main objective of first 5-year plan was the improvisation in the agriculture by the introduction of land reforms. Is it clear? So that would have been, or that could have been, the introduction. Coming on to the next aspect, that factors you could have written in the body. What are these factors? That policies and the acts of the government, several acts, land reform acts government had framed. You could illustrate 3-4 here. That was all. Need for higher food production, as I told you that in India 70% of the population was dependent on agriculture, but the produce of agriculture was very low. Still, at that point of time, we were importing the staple even, I mean wheat. Okay, we were importing wheat from America. So, dependence on the import for staple, that was a major concern. Therefore, there was the requirement to increase the production, and to increase the production, more land was required. So, the land which was in the clutches of jamidars, it had to be taken away by the introduction of land reforms. Next is proactive approach followed by some states. See guys, some states at that point of time, they played a very important role, and they were proactive, you know. They were forcing the union government to bring on the land reforms, because in their state people were suffering from these conditions. People were paying because of the improper distribution of land. So that's why these states were proactive. They were forcing the union government to bring out these land reforms. Then cooperative farming and social reforms, Bhudan. After that, certain social reforms were introduced. People started donating their lands. Cooperative farming, many people combined together and started farming together. So all these things were there. Okay. Let's talk about recent reforms. So modernization of land area code. So what has been done is land area records. So the land, the paper of lands, they have been modernized. Now each land has got its paper and they are available. Not done, not implemented to the full scale, but yes, government has started doing it. Okay. Then certain schemes government has launched. 𝐼 scheme, that is nothing but the digitalization of property paper, that comes under 𝐼 scheme. A card is given to the farmers, and that card holds the digital record of the land that farmer is cultivating. Okay. So such steps have been taken by the government. Clear? Okay. So that was your question number 3. Moving on. 11th question. It is saying, discuss the merits and demerits of the 4 labor codes in the context of labor market reforms in India. What has been the progress so far in this regard? So pay attention guys. If you, first of all, if you talk about labor, right, labor. So labor as a subject, it comes under concurrent list. What we mean by concurrent? Let me write it. That labor subject concurrent list. By concurrent list, I mean that both state and the union can frame laws for it. Okay. So in labor subject, both the state government and the union government can frame the laws. Okay. And due to this only, there was a time when there were more than 100 labor laws. There were more than 100 laws. And that was also the case that some of these laws were contradictory to each other. It was a popular saying at that time that if you obey all to the core, all the 100% union laws, union labor laws, you will end up violating at least 20% of these labor laws framed by state. So obeying the laws framed by center will lead to at least 20% violation of the laws framed by state. So such was the scenario. Hence, it was the necessity, it was the requirement that government should do something, government should interfere. Yes or no? Why? Because of these rigid pattern or rigid laws that were existing at that point of time. Several consequences were there which were paid by the Indian economy. What were these consequences? That we were not able to attract foreign businesses. We were not able to attract foreign investments because the firms, the foreign firms, they knew that so rigid are the labor laws, they will not be able to function here properly. That's why they did not invest here. That's why they did not bring their business to the country, leading to the declination in the growth of the country, economic growth, GDP growth. Getting my point? Hence, central government took initiatives to rationalize the labor laws. Okay? And in 2019 and 2020, in 2019 and 2020, central government proposed to rationalize labor laws and it introduced the bill got passed also, it was passed by the union government, but the bill yet has to be notified. Why? Because as I told you that in case of labor, it is such a subject that both state government and central government can frame laws for it. So the bill that has been passed, it is not accepted by all the states, and states also have the power in it, right? So it is not accepted by all the states. Some states, they have actually not written or applied these laws. Getting my point? Some states, they are not in consensus with these laws. Okay, they are not agreeing with these laws. So this is a problem. That's why labor laws are still not notified, and the agenda of Modi government, this Modi 3.0, was that in first 100 days, by the way, 100 days of Modi government have passed, but their agenda was that in first 100 days they are going to get labor laws notified, but this has not happened till now. Understood? Now let's talk. So what were these laws? So actually pay attention. Central government, it looked at more than 30 laws that were existing, and based on it, it did what? It framed 4 basic labor laws. What these 4 basic labor laws was? Number 1, the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Code of 2020. Okay, so number 1 was occupational safety, health and working code, and this came in 2020. Getting my point? Second was the code on wage. This was 2019. If you could have written these things, you would have got extra marks. Okay, better marks. Third is the code on social security. This was also launched in 2019. And next is the Industrial Relation Code. Okay, this was also in 2020. So these 4 were the major categories or major reform done by the government. Under these, government launched its new labor laws. Okay, now let's look at the merits and demerits of these codes. So merits. First of all, as I told you, there were so many labor laws making it a very rigid system. So there was reduction in the number of laws. Okay. Laws representing the current environment. See, the labor laws which were framed, it actually started in 1947-48. Okay. Conditions that were prevalent at that time when the laws were framed and the conditions that are existing today, the entire working environment has changed. The need and demand of that time were totally different from the need, are totally different from the need and requirement of today. So these labor laws, these new labor laws, they are actually based on the current environment. Okay. Next is ease of doing business. Okay, ease of doing business. These labor laws, they promote the ease of doing business. Now business can be started and done easily. Getting my point? Next is empowerment of women. See, I'll give you an example. First of all, these labor laws, now they aim and they promote the empowerment of women, and that's a very good and welcome step. You know, initially if you talk about night shifts, then only male workers were expected to perform night shift. Now the option is given to female workforce as well, that if they want, they can do the night shift. If they don't want, they can't, they should not do it. Okay, but at least now they have option, they have a choice. And then again, incorporation of female workforce, this has also been done, it has been upgraded for empowerment of women. Next is extending the benefits to the informal sector. See, the earlier labor laws, they were only curtailed till formal sector. Nothing was done for the informal sector. But in India, many workers are employed in the informal sector. So what about their rights? Who will safeguard their social welfare? Thereby, these laws are also including the welfare of laborers working in informal sector. Getting my point? Okay. Next is demerits of these codes. Now there are certain accusations and allegations against these laws. Major one are, number one, it is capitalistic in nature. These laws are being accused of being capitalistic in nature. That means they are not looking at the welfare of the laborers, rather they are looking at the welfare of the firms. The laws are designed keeping in mind the welfare of the businesses, not of the laborers. That's one of the major accusation. Number two, need for consensus from all stakeholders, as I discussed earlier also, that states are also the party in the subject of labor. So, and I told you that all the states are not in agreement with these laws which are being framed. Then you also have got trade unions. So trade unions, some of the trade unions, they also disagree with few clauses of the labor laws. So all parties are not in consensus, they are not in agreement, okay, regarding these laws. Next is easy hiring and firing policy, and that is very important. Under these laws, what is being said is that if these laws will be implemented, these laws actually promote easy hiring. You can hire, firms can hire whenever they need, and firms can fire whenever they are not in need of labor. Okay, that is also one of the major accusation on these laws. Next is diminishing the rights of the workers and the role of trade unions. So what is being said, that in order to make these laws flexible, government has actually risked the rights of the workers. The laborers for whom to safeguard their rights, these laws were framed, but actually what has come out of these laws is reducing their rights, okay, and reducing the or diminishing the role of trade unions as well. Getting my point? That is one of the problem of these laws. Clear, guys? Okay. Moving on to the next question, that is question number 12 of Indian economy. So, it is saying, what is the need for expanding the regional air connectivity in India? In this context, discuss the government's Udan. Udan means Udega Desh Ka Aam Nagrik scheme and its achievements. So see guys, what Union government is doing is, it is actually trying to establish airports, or you can say it is actually trying to introduce air services in regional areas. I am not talking about metro areas. Metro areas already have air facilities, but government is trying to incorporate regional areas in it as well. Okay, so that's what the question is asking, that what is the need for expanding regional connectivity, okay, and what schemes government has undertaken for this. So see, if I talk about the need for regional connectivity, so pay attention. The issue is that in India there are many airports. In reality there are many airports, but the problem is they are not utilized. Airports are present in various reasons, but they are underutilized or not utilized. Getting my point? So first is that infra is available, airports are available, but airports are underutilized or unutilized. Number 2, see guys, another issue is that why government needs to work on regional connectivity. The places where they are working, the airfare is so high that not many can afford it. Yeah, so a small percentage of regional population can even afford it. These are actually the factors or the need for expanding regional air connectivity, okay. A small percentage of population can afford. I am writing in short, because it will take a lot of time if I start writing the full forms and all. Okay. Third is promotion of aviation industry. See, government is actually promoting the aviation industry. Why? Because it has been observed that demand of aviation industry is lot. Why demand of aviation industry is lot? Because there are several places. For example, if you want to move from Kerala to Delhi and if you are using train, it will take you few days to reach from Kerala to Delhi. And let's say if you have got important meeting, something like that, then how can you afford to lose so much of time? So yeah, need is there, but only 3-4% of the population is availing to the air services. Now this is an issue. So that is why government wants more participation in the air services by the common mass. Thereby government is promoting the aviation industry. And for promotion of it, government is incorporating regional air connectivity. Next is movement of passengers. As I told you, gave you the example of passengers from, let's say, Kerala to Delhi, but agricultural commodities. See guys, this is one of the major issues. Let's take the example, let's say, again I will go to, let's say, Thiruvananthapuram. Now, in Thiruvananthapuram, land may be very fertile for the growth of certain crops. But these are agricultural produce. They will get rotten in some time. So if trucks, rails, all these things are used for transportation of these crops, they will get rotten, they will be of no use. Getting my point? and due to this, these crops are not being sold. Yeah, they are not getting the expected customer base. Thereby, the farmers cultivating these crops are also suffering. And what's the issue? The only issue is connectivity. If connectivity, air connectivity could have been there, then these products could have reached its targeted customer base. The product could have been sold, the farmers could have earned, the people who were desiring for these products, they could have got the product. But the only unavailability of air connectivity is leading to these issues. Getting my point? Okay. So, due to these problems, in 2016, government introduced National Civil Aviation Policy, NCAP. So, in 2016, to address these issues, government introduced NCAP, National Civil Aviation Policy. And under National Civil Aviation Policy, government introduced a policy called UDAN, an initiative called UDAN, Udega Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. Getting my point? And UDAN is what? It is actually Regional Connectivity Scheme, RCS. It is Regional Connectivity Scheme, an initiative under NCAP for what? For regional connectivity. Getting my point? So, what government did was, I hope this is clear. In 2016, UDAN was launched, yeah, for regional connectivity scheme. Okay, what was the purpose? To connect tier 2 and tier 3 cities under this. Okay, then the airlines, they will offer see, one more step was there, that airlines are going to offer at least 50% of the seats at the subsidized rates. Okay, and rate was like 2500 per hour for the flight. Okay, and the target was to achieve the connectivity of more than 100 airports till 2024. Getting my point? So far, what all has been done? So far, more than 400 routes launched. More than 400 routes have been launched. Then many of the routes have been discontinued. Why? Because they were of no use. That is why they have been not discontinued. Then pandemic. A question was raised in the parliament that under UDAN what all has been achieved. So the aviation minister answered that the demand has been curbed because of pandemic and after pandemic effect of pandemic. So pandemic has affected the demand. Then cost of operation routes has also increased. Clear? So all these were the issues. Getting my point? Okay. Moving on to the next question. So the next question is saying, elucidate the importance of buffer stock for stabilizing the, and this is the last question of Indian economy. For stabilizing agricultural prices in India, what are the challenges associated with the storage of buffer stock? We have to discuss it. See guys, if I talk about buffer stock, that actually what is buffer stock? So buffer stock means extra or additional stock. Buffer stock is extra stock or it is the additional stock. So see, what happens is, if you talk, I will just give you an example to make it clear to you that what actually buffer stock concept is. See, under Food Security of India, and Food Security Act of Government of India, what happens is that Government of India, it procures certain crops. There is a list of the crops, necessary crops that are being procured by the government, union government. So government procures these crops. So let's say, giving you an example, that government this year, let's say it procures 100 tons, just an example, of wheat. It is very low. I know 100 tons is nothing for government, but I am just giving an example. So government, let's say, procured 100 tons of wheat. Now, by the concept of buffer stock, let us say government is saying 20% will be the buffer stock in wheat. So now, instead of procuring 100 tons of wheat, government will procure 120 tons of wheat. Okay. So this 20 tons is actually your buffer stock for wheat. Okay. It is your buffer stock for wheat. Okay. Now what is the need for it? Why government is procuring extra or additional food grain? So see, I am going to write several points that what is the need, why government needs to introduce buffer stock. So if I talk about need of buffer stock, so see guys, first of all, price stabilization. See, what happens is, as I told you, that in India the farming has still not employed the modern technological processes. It is still dependent on old ways of farming. Due to this, what happens is that crops are dependent on weather, right? They are dependent on water. Irrigation system is again not proper. Getting me? So since crops are not, you can say, not dependent or not using proper technological processes, hence the growth is weather dependent, it is not weather resilient. Okay. Therefore, sometimes growth of crops can be good, the production or yield can be good, sometimes it can deteriorate, but food is something that is required by each and every individual to stay alive. And if particularly you talk of a staple, that is wheat and paddy or rice. So therefore, to counter when such situations arise, then government should have some extra stock. Else what will happen? We have already seen a question or related to high food inflation. So what will happen under these conditions if government is not having extra stock? Because why? See, initially government was, I am again taking the example of wheat that I earlier gave. Government was procuring 100 ton of wheat. Now why government procures wheat? Because government will distribute it. Yes or no? Why is government procuring certain crops? Because government will distribute it at subsidized rate or for free. Right? That's what government of India is doing, distributing it to 75 crore people for free. So government will distribute 100 tons. Now this 20 ton of extra wheat that remains with the government, which is called buffer stock, this will be used to mete out such circumstances that may arise, okay, when there can be shortage of food that will lead to high prices of food. So then government will introduce or government will have this buffer stock, it can stabilize the prices. That's why price stabilization. Second is ensuring public distribution of food grains. As I told you, government should not fall short of food grains in case of any emergency. Okay. Next is protecting the interest of farmers. See, when government is going to procure this extra crop under buffer stock, so farmers will have extra crops to sell. Again, farmers can gain from it. Getting my point? Growth in regional growth as well. When government is going to keep the buffer stock of the regional food, or regional crops, so there will be growth for those sectors also. Farmer can sell out these crops to government, thereby they can earn, improving their income. Understood? Clear? So these are the need or requirements that were there for introducing buffer stock. Now I am going to write down the challenges or concerns. Number one is expenditure. See guys, already government is spending a lot of money for procurement of food crops. Now government wants to procure this additional called buffer stock. Initially spending was high, and when you are going to procure additional amount of food crops, then you are even going to spend more. So expenditure is obviously going to rise. Yes or no? Next is wastages. See guys, in India, the storage capacity is limited. Availability of storage capacity is limited, and since storage capacity is limited, availability of storage capacity is limited, then the food crops that government is keeping as buffer stock, they may get rotten. It's food crop. Due to unavailability of storage, they can rot, and it happens a lot. May promote cultivation of certain crops. Now see guys, what farmers will do? Farmers will gain, as I have told you, because government is acquiring additional food crops. So now farmers will start growing, and this is problematic. Why would farmers grow any other crop which is not being procured or which is not taken as buffer stock? Farmers will grow only those crops which government is acquiring or procuring as buffer stock. Now this will lead to the non-cultivation of other crops which government is not taking as buffer stock. So that's problematic. Getting me? Now see guys, already USA is criticizing India because it is procuring Indian government is procuring so much of food grains. Now when this additional buffer stock India is going to procure, further criticism, many other countries will criticize India, and that will to some extent compromise the Indo-US or relationship. Getting my point? Yes or no? Okay, so that was all in the Indian economy section. Okay, now we are going to start with the agriculture section. So guys, the question is, what are the major challenges faced by Indian irrigation system in recent time? State the measure taken by the government for the efficient irrigation system. So see guys, if we talk about the major problems that the irrigation system is facing, so first of all, there are many factors. I'll illustrate few factors that you could have written. First thing is that in India, the farming or irrigational techniques, they are not modified, they are not in accordance to the technology. Okay, so lack of technology. Then government earlier not much expenditure or attention was given to the process of irrigation. So lack of expenditure in the part from the government. Okay. Then due to this, what happened was that people were forced, or farmers were forced to be dependent on the rains. Okay, and due to that, again there was inflation in food prices. Some year the prices are very high, some year the prices are very low. But who was in all suffering? Farmers were suffering due to this. Getting my point? The lands became dry. All these things happened due to the lack of due to the lack of proper irrigation system. These were the challenges. And due to this, what has happened? Now government has launched several schemes, central government, and certain measures have been taken, and you can name these schemes. That will be fine, that will fetch you extra marks. Then what you can do is you can illustrate one very important factor, that central government is taking advice from the state government as well, because you know the overall, if you look at the lands, farming lands, they come under the states only. Yes or no? They are in the state, right? And every state has got different conditions. So the government of that particular state will be more aware with the problem faced by its farmers. So government is consulting these states, and together with mutual consensus, they are framing the policies to promote the irrigation system. Okay, so all these things you could have illustrated in this answer. It was very easy irrigation system based question. Okay, thank you. Okay, one more question we will do. Last question, and this is the two questions came from agriculture. This is 8th. Now this was very much expected. Since last budget, Shri Dhan, millets are called Shri Dhan. You could have mentioned it. Union Finance Minister called millets as Shri Dhan. So government of India is promoting the use of millets. Why? Because millets have got several properties. What are these? They can be grown at a cheaper rate. What are the benefits of growing millets? You can grow them cheap. Okay. Then they can grow almost everywhere. These are the reasons why government is promoting the use of millets. Okay. Then they won't get rotten so easily, so you can transport them without spoiling them. So can be transported without getting rotten, so etc. These were the factors because of which government of India promoted the use of millets. Now millets also have got several health benefits. So they have got high nutritional value. Okay, they have these required vitamins and all that are required. Okay, then they are light thing to have in comparison to wheat. They are light and healthy. So all these are aspects related to health. Okay, so you could have elaborated it, and that could have been the end of the answer. It could have fetched you good marks. Okay guys, so I hope you understood the entire thing and enjoyed the session as well. Okay, So that's it in the section of Indian economy and agriculture. Thank you.